At the University of Lagos, love stories came and went, but none was as admired as Kenneth and Ama's. Kenneth was a final-year economics student, intelligent, calm, and focused. Ama studied mass communication, graceful and kind, known for her soft voice and bright mind. They met during a campus seminar where Ama gave a brilliant presentation on business ethics. Kenneth was captivated by her confidence and sincerity. After the event, he introduced himself, and from that day, their paths intertwined. What began as friendship grew into a bond everyone noticed. They studied together, ate together, and spent evenings by the lagoon dreaming about the future. Kenneth once said, "Ama, I'll make enough money to give you the life you deserve." She smiled. "I don't need wealth, Kenneth. Just don't stop loving me." After graduation, life tested their promise. Ama quickly secured a tech job in Ikeja, while Kenneth struggled to find employment. Ama didn't complain, she invited him to stay with her in her small Yaba apartment. She paid the bills, encouraged him, and never made him feel less. But deep down, Kenneth's pride began to ache. Ama's first work bonus went into buying Kenneth a laptop. "Use it to start your real estate dream," she said. Touched, he vowed to make her proud. With time, her faith in him paid off. Kenneth began attending property seminars, meeting agents, and slowly building a business. Months passed, and things improved. Kenneth started earning and dressing better. But success came with distance. Late-night meetings replaced quiet dinners. Phone calls replaced laughter. Ama missed the man she fell in love with, but she stayed hopeful, telling herself it was only a phase. One evening, she told him, "I want to invest in your business." Kenneth hesitated, but she insisted. Love means building together. With her savings, he expanded his company, and though she smiled, she could feel him slipping away. Their love was still alive, but something had changed. Kenneth's eyes now held more ambition than affection. He was chasing success, while Ama held on to memories. She didn't know it yet, but the promise they made under the campus trees was already beginning to fade. In Lagos, love often collides with survival, and sometimes, success becomes the sharpest test of loyalty. For Kenneth and Ama, the test had just begun. Ama's life was beginning to bloom. Her tech company in Ikeja valued her brilliance, and her salary grew steadily. She was proud, not only of her achievements but of Kenneth's progress too. His small real estate business was gaining clients, and for a while, everything felt balanced. But slowly, that balance began to tilt. Kenneth was no longer the humble dreamer Ama had fallen in love with at the university. His days grew longer, his tone sharper. Calls went unanswered, and when Ama asked questions, he brushed them off. "I'm busy," he often said. "Business is demanding." At first, Ama understood. She reminded herself that growth took time. But weeks turned into months, and the man who once shared every thought with her now felt like a stranger. Kenneth began attending social events, real estate exhibitions, business dinners, weekend meetings. At those events, he met people Ama didn't know. One of them was Dera, a young, strikingly beautiful woman with a bold smile and smooth words. She laughed easily, flattered Kenneth constantly, and seemed fascinated by his rising success. For Kenneth, Dera was a breath of fresh air, fun, outgoing, and unafraid to praise him in ways Ama never did. Ama, on the other hand, was modest, practical, always reminding him to save and stay focused. Dera made him feel like a king, Ama made him feel responsible. Slowly, Kenneth began to prefer flattery to honesty. Ama noticed the change. Kenneth came home later than usual. He stopped sharing his plans, and his affection faded. Still, she tried to hold on. One evening, she cooked his favorite meal and said softly, "We hardly talk anymore." "Are you okay?" Kenneth sighed. "Ama, must everything be about feelings? Can't you see I'm working hard for us?" That us was becoming less and less real. Ama cried silently that night. She had given him her savings, her loyalty, her heart. But love was beginning to feel one-sided. Still, she stayed, because she remembered his promises, because she believed love could still fix them. As months passed, Kenneth's business soared. He bought a car, moved in bigger circles, and began to see Ama's simplicity as a flaw. Dera was always around, visiting his office, laughing at his jokes, posting pictures with him on social media. Ama saw the signs but chose denial. She told herself Kenneth was just caught up in work. But deep down, she knew, the man she loved was slipping away, not to failure this time, but to success. One afternoon, Kenneth came home with a new phone and casually mentioned that he was looking for a new apartment, closer to clients. Ama smiled weakly, pretending to understand. That night, she couldn't sleep. She knew what was coming, she just didn't want to believe it. In Lagos, success can change love faster than failure ever could. Kenneth was proof of that. The same man Ama once fed and believed in now stood at the edge of betrayal, blinded by pride, tempted by charm. And as the city lights glimmered outside their small apartment, Ama's heart quietly began to break. Ama had always believed that love meant sacrifice. Even as Kenneth drifted away, she reminded herself that every relationship had seasons. Some were bright and full of laughter, others, silent and heavy. She told herself theirs was only passing through one of those quiet seasons. When Kenneth began talking about expanding his business, Ama didn't hesitate. "How much do you need?" she asked one evening after dinner. He looked at her in surprise. "Ama, you've done enough already. I can handle it." But she shook her head. "No, Kenneth. I want to help you grow. You once helped me believe in myself. Let me do the same for you." It wasn't just money she was offering, it was trust. She took a large part of her savings, almost everything she had worked for, and invested it into his new real estate project. Kenneth accepted it with a brief hug, already thinking of his next big deal. For a while, it seemed like everything was finally falling into place. Kenneth's new project took off faster than anyone expected. Clients were impressed, and his name started to spread in Lagos real estate circles. He bought a sleek car, wore designer suits, and started attending more social events. Ama watched him with pride and quiet relief. She was happy to see him succeed, even when he no longer made time for her. She believed that once things stabilized, they would return to how they used to be. But success can be louder than love. Kenneth's growing confidence slowly turned into pride. He began to feel different, superior even. When Ama asked about his day, he would answer vaguely, his eyes fixed on his phone. When she tried to plan a weekend together, he always had a meeting. Ama didn't complain, she simply loved harder. She would iron his clothes, cook his favorite meals, and wait up for him when he came home late. Sometimes, he didn't come home at all. Then came the night she saw the first real sign. Kenneth had left his phone on the couch when he stepped out to take a call. A message popped up on the screen, a name she already feared, Dera. It read, "I miss you already, baby. Can't wait for our next trip." Ama froze. Her hands trembled as she stared at the message. She didn't open it, didn't touch the phone. Instead, she sat quietly, her chest heavy with disbelief. When Kenneth came back inside, she looked at him, really looked, and realized how much he had changed. The tenderness in his eyes was gone, replaced by the coldness of a man who had outgrown the person who once carried him. Later that night, when she tried to talk about it, he dismissed her. "Ama, please, don't start. You know how people like to talk nonsense." But his voice lacked conviction. Ama cried silently after he fell asleep. She wasn't angry, not yet. Just heartbroken. She had given him her money, her time, her faith. She had built him up from nothing, only to feel invisible in his success. Still, she told herself to hold on a little longer. Maybe it was just a phase. Maybe the man she loved was still somewhere beneath the pride and distance. But deep inside, a quiet truth had begun to whisper, that love, once taken for granted, rarely finds its way back. And for Ama, the woman who had invested her all, the returns on love were starting to vanish. Kenneth's rise was swift. Within months, he became one of the most promising young real estate agents in Lagos. His phone never stopped ringing. Clients called him Mr. K. He had money, a new car, and a growing list of influential friends. But with every success, Ama seemed to fade further into the background of his life. At first, she tried to keep up, encouraging him, attending his small business events, helping him review contracts. But Kenneth no longer wanted her in that space. "Ama, you don't understand this world," he once said dismissively. "It's not as simple as you think." That sentence cut deep. It was as if the man she once inspired now saw her as beneath him. Ama started to notice how different he had become. His calls became shorter, his affection mechanical. He started dressing differently, spending more time outside than at home. She'd wait up late into the night, listening for his footsteps, hoping to see the old Kenneth walk through the door. But what came home now was a man lost in his own reflection. And in that reflection, another woman had begun to appear, Dera. She was younger, lively, and always around Kenneth's business gatherings. People whispered about her, but Ama brushed it off, trusting Kenneth's earlier promises. Until one Friday evening, when she decided to surprise him at a company dinner. She walked into the restaurant, searching for his face in the crowd. When she finally saw him, he was laughing, the kind of laugh she hadn't heard in months. Sitting beside him was Dera, her hand lightly resting on his arm. Alma froze where she stood, her heart pounding. Kenneth saw her too. For a brief second, guilt flashed across his face. Then, as if nothing happened, he turned back to his table. Alma quietly walked out. She didn't make a scene. She didn't cry until she got home. That night, she sat on the floor of their apartment, staring at the laptop she had bought him, the same laptop that had started everything. She whispered through tears, "Maybe I loved you too much." When Kenneth came home much later, she tried to talk. "Who is Dera?" she asked softly. He sighed, irritated. "Alma, she's just a friend. Why are you always assuming things?" Her voice broke. "Because you've changed, Kenneth. You don't even look at me the same way." He turned away, his tone cold. "Alma, stop this drama. I'm tired." That was the night something inside her cracked. She realized she was losing him, not to another woman, but to his own pride. Over the next weeks, Kenneth stopped coming home entirely. Alma stopped asking questions. Love can't survive when only one person is fighting to keep it alive. By the time Kenneth finally returned, it wasn't to reconcile, it was to pack his clothes. He told her he had found a new apartment. Alma stood by the door, tears in her eyes. "Is this how it ends?" Kenneth didn't answer. He just said, "I need space. Don't make it hard." When he walked out, Alma felt the walls of their home collapse around her heart. The man she once built had finally left, not because he lacked love, but because he loved himself too much to remember who helped him rise. When Kenneth moved out, Alma felt her world collapse. She sat for days staring at the space he once occupied, the chair he loved, the spot on the bed where he slept, the empty side of the wardrobe that still smelled faintly of his cologne. She kept hoping he would come back, knock on the door, and say it was all a mistake. But he didn't. Kenneth had moved into a new apartment in Lekki, one far more expensive than his income justified. Dera was with him almost every day. She filled his new life with laughter, parties, and praise. She called him "my king," told him he was destined for greatness, and reminded him how different he was from ordinary men. Kenneth believed her. He convinced himself that he deserved better than Ama, that she was too simple, too ordinary, too tied to his past struggles. In his mind, he wasn't leaving love behind, he was stepping into success. Ama, meanwhile, broke silently. She tried calling, texting, begging for explanations. Kenneth rarely replied. When he did, his responses were cold. "Alma, please stop," he wrote once. "We've outgrown each other. Move on." Those words shattered her. Outgrown? How could a man outgrow the woman who carried his dreams? Alma cried every night, praying for a miracle. She replayed their university days in her head, the laughter, the promises, the future they planned. It all felt like a cruel dream now. Friends advised her to let go, but her heart wasn't ready. She still believed the Kenneth she loved was somewhere behind the arrogance. Then one day, he came. Alma opened the door, shocked to see him standing there, well-dressed, smelling of expensive cologne. For a brief moment, hope flickered in her eyes. But it died the moment he spoke. "I came to pick up the rest of my things," he said flatly. Alma stared at him. "Kenneth, what happened to us?" He sighed. "Alma, please. Let's not do this. You're a good woman, but I can't marry an old woman who doesn't understand my world." Her lips trembled. "An old woman? Kenneth, I'm only a year older than you." He didn't respond. He simply packed his belongings and walked away. When the door closed, Alma fell to her knees. The man she once built her life around had not only left, he had humiliated her. She cried until her tears ran dry. Meanwhile, Kenneth's world with Dera glittered. Expensive dinners, weekend trips, luxury clothes, everything he thought he wanted. Dera's friends envied her. She flaunted him on social media, posting pictures with captions like, "My man, my peace." Kenneth felt untouchable. He had money, fame, and a woman who adored him, or so he thought. But pride blinds even the wisest hearts. What Kenneth didn't see was that Dera was never truly his. Behind the smiles and sweet words, she and her brother had their own plans, plans that would soon strip Kenneth of everything he owned. And while Kenneth celebrated his success, Alma sat in her quiet apartment, praying for strength. She no longer prayed for him to return. She prayed for peace. Because sometimes, love isn't lost to distance or death, but to betrayal that burns too deeply to forgive. Kenneth's life with Dera sparkled like a dream. His business flourished, his face appeared in property magazines, and his social media overflowed with pictures of cars, champagne, and luxury. To everyone, he was living the Lagos dream, the boy who rose from nothing to everything. But behind the glow, something darker was growing. Dera was stunning, charming, and clever, too clever. She knew exactly how to handle men like Kenneth, men whose pride was bigger than their wisdom. Her brother, Chuka, was the quiet mastermind. Together, they saw Kenneth not as a partner, but as a goldmine waiting to be emptied. At first, Dera played her role perfectly. She called Kenneth "my king," made him feel irreplaceable, and constantly told him he deserved more. "Babe," she would say, "why keep small clients when you can go into big real estate deals? I can introduce you to my brother, he knows investors." Kenneth, blinded by love and ego, agreed. He trusted Dera completely. Soon, Chuka began handling Kenneth's financial transactions, managing accounts, moving funds, signing contracts. Kenneth barely paid attention, he was too busy enjoying his new lifestyle. Alma was long forgotten. If her name crossed his mind, it was only as a memory he quickly pushed aside. Months passed, and Kenneth's empire grew, or so he thought. Dera and Chuka were quietly moving his money, using fake accounts and forged documents. Every deal they made under his company's name went through their hands first. Kenneth didn't notice. He was too proud to suspect betrayal. Then one morning, everything began to crumble. Kenneth woke up to dozens of missed calls. His business partner, Mr. Tund, sounded panicked. "Kenneth, what's going on? All your company accounts are empty." Kenneth laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. But when he checked, his smile vanished. The accounts were indeed drained. Millions, gone. His properties were frozen, his office sealed. He tried to reach Dera, but her phone was off. He drove to her apartment, empty. Neighbors said she had moved out the night before. Chuka too had disappeared. For the first time in years, Kenneth felt fear. Real fear. He drove around Lagos the entire day, calling everyone he could think of. Some ignored him, others avoided his calls. By evening, the truth became clear: he had been scammed. The woman he left everything for had stripped him of everything he owned. That night, Kenneth sat in his empty apartment, staring at the same laptop Ama once bought him. He felt sick remembering her words, "Just don't forget me when you become rich." He had forgotten, and now, he had nothing left. In the silence of his downfall, memories of Ama flooded back. Her patience, her kindness, her sacrifices. He realized too late that the love he abandoned was the only true thing he ever had. For the first time in a long while, Kenneth cried. Not for the money, but for himself, for the man he used to be before pride and greed consumed him. Lagos had taught him the hardest lesson of all: not every smile is love, and not every rise is success. Kenneth's life unraveled faster than he could comprehend. In just 1 week, everything he had built disappeared. His cars were seized by creditors, his office shut down, and his so-called friends stopped answering his calls. The same people who once praised him now whispered about his downfall. But Kenneth didn't care about the money anymore, he wanted Dera. The woman who promised him love had vanished with everything he owned. He started searching everywhere. He drove through the busy streets of Lagos like a madman, visiting every place they had ever gone together: the restaurant in Lekki, the hotel in Victoria Island, even the beach where she once said she loved him. No one had seen her. In desperation, he tracked down some of Dera's friends. One of them, after much persuasion, finally spoke. "Dera don't travel, Kenneth. She and her brother left for London last week." Kenneth froze. "You're lying." "I swear. I even helped her pack. She said she was done with Nigeria." The words hit him like thunder. He walked away quietly, his legs weak beneath him. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in darkness, staring at nothing, the echoes of Dera's laughter haunting his mind. He called her number repeatedly, each time hearing the same cold message: "This number is not reachable." Days turned into weeks. Kenneth grew thinner, sleepless, haunted by guilt and regret. He stopped eating, stopped shaving, stopped living. For the first time, he understood how it felt to be truly alone. One afternoon, as he walked along the marina waterfront, he saw couples holding hands, laughing, people he once looked down on when he was rich. Now, he was invisible among them, another man crushed by his own choices. He thought of Ama then. The memory hit him so hard he nearly broke down in public. Ama, the woman who had stood by him when he had nothing. The woman who gave him her savings, her love, her faith. The woman he had left for another. Tears filled his eyes. He whispered to himself, "I destroyed the only person who ever loved me." That night, he decided to find Ama again. Maybe she would forgive him. Maybe she would help him start over. It was a foolish hope, but it was the only one he had left. He borrowed a friend's old car and drove to Yaba. The road was familiar, yet every turn felt heavier than the last. When he stopped in front of Ama's old apartment, he hesitated. What if she hated him now? What if she refused to see him? He climbed the stairs slowly, heart pounding. But when he knocked, a stranger opened the door. "Sorry," the woman said. "Ama moved out months ago." "Do you know where she went?" he asked desperately. "She lives in Suralere now, I think. I hear she's doing well." Kenneth nodded weakly and walked back to his car. Doing well. The word stung. For years, he had dreamed of success. Now, Ama had it, and he had nothing. Still, he told himself he had to see her, even if it was just to say sorry. Because sometimes, forgiveness is the only wealth a broken man can afford to seek. It took Kenneth 3 more days to gather the courage to visit Ama. He rehearsed what he would say 100 times, apologies, explanations, pleas for forgiveness. None of the words felt enough, but guilt pushed him forward. When he finally arrived at Ama's new apartment in Surulere, he stood outside the gate for several minutes, his palms sweaty, his chest heavy with shame. Everything around him looked cleaner, brighter, even the air felt calmer. He knocked softly. Ama opened the door, and for a moment, time froze. She looked different, not in a way money could explain, but in peace. Her eyes no longer carried the sadness he had left behind. She wore a simple dress, her hair neatly tied, her smile calm and distant. "Kenneth," she said quietly, surprise flickering across her face. "What are you doing here?" He swallowed hard. "Ama, please, can I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was neat, filled with warmth and quiet music playing in the background. It smelled of lavender, the same scent she used to love. Kenneth stood awkwardly, unable to meet her gaze. "You look good," he said finally. "Thank you," Ama replied softly. "How have you been?" He laughed bitterly. "Terrible. I've lost everything, Ama. The business, the cars, even the people I thought were friends." She said nothing, just listened, the same way she used to when she loved him. "I was blind," Kenneth continued, voice trembling. "I let pride destroy everything we built. Dera and her brother, they took everything. I don't even know where they are now." Ama's eyes softened slightly, but her expression remained controlled. "I'm sorry, Kenneth. Truly." He stepped closer. "Ama, I came here because I need you. I know I don't deserve it, but please, can we start over? I'll do better this time. I'll love you the way you always loved me." For a long moment, Ama said nothing. Then she sighed and sat down. "Kenneth, do you know how many nights I cried for you? How many times I begged God to bring you back? You broke me, and when I finally healed, I realized I couldn't live my life waiting for someone who threw me away." Her voice was calm, not angry. That hurt him even more. He knelt before her. "Ama, please. I'll make things right. Just give me one more chance." She looked at him with sadness. "Kenneth, I've forgiven you, but I've moved on." Those words felt like a blade. "Moved on?" She nodded gently. "His name is James. He's kind, patient, and he's asked me to marry him." Kenneth's breath caught. "You're getting married?" "In a few weeks," she said softly. "James treats me with respect, the way I once prayed you would." Silence filled the room. Kenneth's eyes burned with tears he couldn't stop. He had come hoping for redemption, but he was too late. He stood slowly, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm happy for you, Ama. You deserve peace." Ama smiled faintly. "And you deserve forgiveness, Kenneth. But peace, you'll have to find that on your own." When he walked out that day, the sun was setting over Surulere. Kenneth didn't look back. For the first time, he understood what real loss meant, not losing money, but losing love that could never be replaced. Ama's life had taken a turn she never imagined possible. The pain that once consumed her had slowly transformed into strength. Time, prayer, and hard work had healed the wounds Kenneth left behind. Her career flourished, and her calm confidence drew people to her. Then came James, quiet, gentle, and everything Kenneth had never been. He didn't try to impress her with wealth or promises. He simply showed up, consistently, kindly, patiently. When she spoke, he listened. When she was tired, he helped. When she was scared to love again, he waited. At first, Ama held back. Her heart still carried scars, and she feared disappointment. But James never rushed her. He told her, "Ama, I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to show you that love doesn't have to hurt." Little by little, she began to trust again. And when he proposed one quiet evening in front of her family, Alma realized she was ready. Ready to love, not from need or obligation, but from peace. While Alma built her new life, Kenneth was learning what it meant to start from nothing. His savings were gone, his reputation destroyed. Every attempt to rebuild failed. People didn't trust him anymore. The same investors who once begged for his time now avoided him completely. He rented a small room in an old building on the mainland, far from the life he once knew. Some nights, he lay awake, haunted by memories. He remembered Alma's laughter, her gentle voice, the nights she waited for him to come home. Now, those moments felt like dreams from another lifetime. When he heard through mutual friends that Alma was engaged, he felt something break inside him, not anger, but a deep, empty ache. He wanted to be happy for her, but jealousy and regret twisted together in his chest. He had thrown away the woman who loved him for the one who destroyed him. A week before Alma's wedding, Kenneth saw her by chance at a cafe in Victoria Island. She was sitting with James, laughing softly over coffee. They looked happy, the kind of happiness that didn't need to be proved. Kenneth stood across the street, unseen, watching. For a moment, he imagined walking over, asking for one last conversation. But he knew it would be selfish. Alma had found peace, and he had no right to disturb it. He turned and walked away, his eyes wet. That night, he wrote in a small notebook. "Alma was my beginning and my ending. I learned love through her and lost it through myself. If life ever gives me another chance, I'll never forget where I fell." Alma, meanwhile, prepared for her wedding with quiet gratitude. She had forgiven Kenneth fully. Forgiveness, she realized, was not about forgetting the pain, but releasing it. She no longer saw herself as the woman who was betrayed, but as one who survived and learned. Her story was no longer about heartbreak, it was about healing. And though she didn't know it, Kenneth, somewhere in that small, lonely room, still whispered her name in the dark, as if hoping the wind might carry his apology to her heart. The wedding day arrived with soft sunshine and laughter in the air. Alma stood before the mirror, dressed in white, her heart calm and steady. It wasn't the excitement of a fairy tale wedding, it was something deeper, peace. The kind that comes after a storm. James stood waiting at the altar, his eyes full of quiet love. Friends and family filled the small church in Suralere, smiling as the music played. As Alma walked down the aisle, she thought of her journey, the heartbreak, the tears, the nights she prayed for strength. All of it had led her here, to a love that healed instead of hurt. Far away, Kenneth sat alone in his small apartment. His clothes were worn, his face older. On the table before him lay a newspaper with Alma's wedding announcement. Her smile beamed from the picture, radiant and free. He stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "You made it, Alma. You finally made it." He wished he could turn back time, to that first day at the university, when he promised never to leave her. But time never grants second chances. In his loneliness, Kenneth began volunteering at a youth center nearby. It wasn't planned, he had gone there one day to look for help, but ended up helping others instead. Teaching the younger boys about business, he found small pieces of purpose again. For the first time in years, people looked at him not as a failure, but as someone who had something to give. Still, at night, memories haunted him. Dera and her brother were never found. The police called it a clean escape. Sometimes he imagined what he would say if he ever saw her again, but the anger had burned out long ago, replaced by sorrow and wisdom. Alma's life blossomed. Her company promoted her to a leadership role. She and James built their home together, simple but filled with laughter. Yet, she never spoke ill of Kenneth. When her friends mentioned him, she only said, he was a chapter one had to live to understand love better. Years later, Ama and James were driving through Yaba when traffic forced them to stop near the university gate, the same place where her story with Kenneth began. She looked out the window and smiled faintly, not from sadness, but from gratitude. Kenneth, too, happened to be nearby that same day, walking home from the youth center. He saw a car pass, and though he didn't know it, Ama was inside. For a second, he felt something warm in his chest, as if peace had finally found him. That evening, he returned to his small room, opened his worn notebook, and wrote his final entry. Love gave me everything, and pride took it all away. But through loss, I found truth, that real love isn't in what we take, but in what we give. He closed the book, exhaled deeply, and smiled. For the first time in a long while, Kenneth felt free. Ama and Kenneth's paths would never cross again, but their story remained, a reminder that love, when pure, never truly dies. It simply teaches, heals, and moves on. And in the city of Lagos, where dreams rise and fall with the tide, their story became a quiet lesson whispered through the hearts of those who dared to love again.